Just realized all that was visible to see. Hey, that's okay. I'm just getting stuff set up. Well, I mean, no point in hiding it now. I forgot I'm not in, what is it, studio mode? Studio mode. That's how you guys are seeing through my disguise. Well, I guess I'm here a minute early. I'll give it a minute. No studio background today. I'm having some issues with that. So, I'm gonna fix my head. My head hurts. It's kind of going down. There we go. It's a little better. Is that thing still open? Nah, it ain't. What the heck? Ah, I see. It's just on the old. Left over. Well, anyway, who we got? Who do we have here? Who is here? Finally, maybe learn what the heck SRPG F2 is about and how to use it. Hopefully, I'll be clarifying some of that up. Hopefully. So there's a lot to it, so it can be a bit difficult. I'll just give it another minute and then we'll get going. How are people? How are folks doing? Hey Samuel, great to see ya. Or Snackzilla. Glad you can make it. Hopefully, I can clarify some questions you guys have. So, I think it's good to go ahead and get started in that mode. Alright, music. And alright, let's get going. Ta-da! Pretending to be a professional again. I know, unbecoming of me. All right, so, welcome everyone to the deeper dive into Super RPG Framework 2 for Unreal Engine 4. So let's go ahead. So what exactly is, hang on. So what is a Super RPG Framework? Now I've talked about this before, but it's important to clarify, I think, for people who are aware of who've used the first version and need to know like how SRPG F2 differs. So as opposed to Super RPG Framework 1, which was just a template excuse me, a template project for like a JRPG template project for Unreal Engine, Super RPG Framework 2 and any version from here on out is a plugin, an add-on for Unreal Engine 4 that is designed for greatly easing the creation of single-player games specifically that contain various RPG elements, whether it be a full-on RPG, something here like Persona 5, something like maybe Outer Worlds, or even if it's something like a point-and-click adventure game that might just use elements of an RPG, like maybe you have to have items or stuff. So that's generally the idea as to what the purpose of it is. It's not super specialized to one type of game so much as it is creating a bunch of tools that'll greatly cut back your development time by making adding things that you'd want in an RPG or game with RPG elements a lot easier. And on that note, that's also why it's been kind of difficult for me to not just show it off, but also explain what it is. Is because it does a lot of stuff, but for the most part, what it does is up to you. Because it's not a single, it's not a single template. It's not a single game type. It is whatever you do with it. And in that sense, I sort of think of it as an engine on top of Unreal 4, or at least an extension on top of Unreal 4, that is meant to provide you a lot of freedom to create the type of RPG you want to make. So hopefully that's also the reason I'm creating some of the template projects, is to show you how you would use it to make things like a traditional turn-based RPG. So, moving on. In order to get it to work, you are going to need a few other plugins as well, because it's kind of uses those somewhat extensively. One is enhanced input. Now, enhanced input comes with Unreal Engine 4 normally, and it's just their newest method or system for handling input in game. And the reason for this is specifically so that I was able to add some input logic within the plugin itself, so you don't necessarily have to set that up for every single game like you normally do. I'll go over the two at the bottom first. Editor scripting tools is a big extension that I would recommend regardless of SRPGF, but it essentially just allows you to do a lot of to script the editor and modify the editor in a lot of ways with blueprints without having to use C++. LA Extended Standard Library, you can get this off the marketplace. It just adds a bunch of new useful functions for your that you can use in your project. The big one is Actions Extension. Now, I've talked about this a lot, and it's the one that gave me a bit of grief because it was taking a while to get updated. And even now, it's not completely updated, but there is a working build that you can get off the SRPGF2 documentation. And what Actions Extension is it's essentially a system or add-on for Unreal that allows you to create what are called actions, which are just asynchronous events that are created and then run and then shut down. And they're fairly simple sounding, but they're incredibly useful for creating logic for your game in a way where you can sort of contain the entire logic in one place, or containing all logic for an event in one place, as well as being able to reuse it across multiple different scenarios and actors and stuff. Anyway, so you will need all of these downloaded and installed, and also turned on before SRPGF will work. Otherwise, it will crash. All right, so so the core features, I've mentioned a little bit about the game settings, game instance, and game mode. I'll go more into those when I actually go into the template or example project. But as far as features, there's a few core features that you need to understand in order to kind of get your mind around how the framework works. One of the most important ones are combatants and units. So I also haven't checked. Is my audio okay? Can you guys all hear me okay? Am I too quiet, too loud? It'll take a minute to get through, but just let me know if I'm too quiet or too loud, and I'll try to fiddle that and fix it up. So my head's in the way a little bit too. 1 second. There we go. Head's down now. Okay, so combatants. So a combatant is essentially, it's an actor component that contains stats and other traits that can be used. Oh wow. See, this is also why I delayed the stream, because I was kind of whipping this together. Hence why there's a typo there. So I'll just explain. It's essentially, it's work similar to Unreal Engine 4's gameplay ability system in the sense that it's a component you put on an actor. It contains stats, stuff like health and mana and strength and defense and stuff, as well as any other traits like maybe elements like is resistance to fire or water or other stuff. and it can use abilities and items. And these abilities and items it uses can apply effects and damage other combatants. So this is the main way that stuff like combat is handled um, in game. And so that's an actor component you add on. So it works very similarly to UE4's gameplay ability system, but without any of the C++ stuff. Next up is units. Now units are essentially like combatants, but they are saved to your game. So they also contain a level. Again, another typo. Sorry, this was a bit rushed. They contain a level. They also contain stats like health and mana and strength, and they contain abilities as well. And they are saved to your game, and they can be basically loaded into their data can be loaded into a combatant. And so essentially, you think of units as like party members, or maybe you could use them for other stuff. Like you could use these as Pokemon or the Persona in the Persona games or stuff like that. They're essentially just entities that will be saved in your game that will contain a level and stats and abilities and stuff like that. And then next up is, and this is a really, really important one, is gameplay modules. Oh, let's go back for a second. Gameplay modules. Now, this is important to notice this is distinct from a module that you'd find in C++. This is something completely different. So try not to get confused when I talk about modules in the context of SRPGF. So a gameplay module is it's an actor component that specifically goes onto your game mode, and it'll implement an entire system or mechanic set into your game. And this can be anything from core stuff like a music system or a save system, or handling party members. It can be anything like that to systems like you have a system for cooking, or a system for turn-based combat, or a system like a data log system, or for a system for quests and stuff. And essentially you'll add these will be added on modularly to your game mode, and then you will call on these to handle events related to that system. And you can also in the game mode modify the specific parameters. And I've specifically constructed in a way to allow you to sort of pick what systems and stuff you want, add them into your game mode, and then control how they interact with each other yourself. The other I'm trying to remember hopefully I've gotten all the core features at least right now. Another core feature are some of the widgets I've added that are because obviously for a lot of RPGs especially, the menu and the interface is an important thing. So, and these widgets are meant to speed up a lot of your development time. So first up, actually, I'm gonna get a drink. Give me just a second. I just absorb water. Anyway, first up we have menus. Now a menu is a user widget that will only have a single instance of it ever open at a time. So a menu can just be opened and closed. And typically it's something that is meant to be, you open it, and when it's open, the game is paused and you're controlling the menu, interacting with the menu. And then when you close out your menus, you go back into the game. You can also use, I also use menus for the user interface, just the general HUD, the heads up display. Because I find it to be a faster way of doing it. But essentially that's the idea, is it's a widget that you'll only ever have one instance of it open at a time. Next widget is entities. Now you won't be creating entities yourself typically, but what these are you'll be creating child classes of entities is what I mean. And what these are is they're essentially a widget that's meant to visually represent some asset type or some data type. For example, a unit or an item or an ability or a combatant. So it would just be a visual asset that would you could put in a unit's name, or their icon, or their biography, or an item's name, icon, whatever. Now these are useful on their own, but their main use is when it comes to the third one, which is selectors. And a selector is a user widget that is meant to list multiple entities at once. And this is probably the one, aside from menus, you'll be using the most, because selectors are essentially a way of you being able to create well, to just list off to quickly list off a bunch of data and asset information in your game. For example, if you had an inventory system and you wanted to list all the items in your inventory, you you would use a selector, and it would just immediately list all those items, and you would need to go in and set up a bunch of a logic in your widget to like find the items, and then you would need to manually add in a vertical box, and then manually set up to create a widget, and then set up all the logic for that. You'd just use a item selector, and then you'd add your own list of items into it, and then it's done. I think that's all for that. And the last thing I'm going to go over as far as these slides is, this is a bit much, so like I'll try to explain it more as I go. But there's a bunch of data assets that will contain a lot of the stuff you'll be using. I've talked about units a bit already. They're assets that contain levels and stats and can be instanced in your save game, so like party members. But one of the most important ones for any RPG, but for SRPGF too, is stats. And stats are just a numerical attribute that a unit or a combatant can have, and it'll scale up or down based on their level. Based on a curve that their level determines what that value is. Now, there are two types of stats, which you'll remember if you've used the previous version of SRPGF. There are metric and static stats. So metric stats have a current value and a max value, and they can be damaged and depleted. So this is stuff like health, mana, and stamina. So it can go up and down. It can be healed or damaged, and that's what metric stats are. And static stats only have a single value. So this would be stuff like strength or defense or speed. So you could apply modifiers to this to change that value, but that value itself is not depleted. It's not like it can max out at whatever. Say you have 120 health and it can max out at that, or it can be depleted to 0. It's just always a single number. Next up are skills. Now, for combatants, combat is typically handled by something called combat actions, which is just a class that you'll create the logic for yourself. But skills allow you to essentially determine a lot of that stuff more. It's hard to explain without you kind of seeing it for yourself. But essentially, skills are just, they're an ability that can be possessed by a unit or combatant. And there's two types. There's combat skills and passive skills. Combat skills are what can be used in combat. They can be used by a combatant, and they can perform an action and then apply an effect to another combatant or to themselves. Passive skills can't actually be used, but they can modify different traits of the possessor, the owner, whether it be their stats or their damage rates or whatever. So items are sort of like skills. They operate in a very similar way to combat skills, but they're, instead of being possessed by a unit or a combatant, they just exist in the world. And then they'll have like a GUID, a code that'll tell them where they're located. But they work the same way, where they can be used by a unit or a combatant and have a combat action and apply combat effects and stuff like that. And one of their only differences is that when used, you can give them an option to be consumed, which means once they're used, they will be removed from the game. Equipment is a subtype of item that can be equipped onto a unit and can modify their traits, like their different stats and stuff. And then damage types, which determine the category of damage that when damage is applied to a unit or a combatant. This is typically what you would use for something like elements. So is this physical damage? Is it fire damage or water damage? Stuff like that. So that is sort of a quick overview of at least a very basic overview of kind of the how SRPGF works. Obviously, it'll probably make much more sense once I get into this a bit more. So let's go ahead and exit out of that, and we'll go ahead and load up the example project. So I meant to set this up a little bit more, but I was short on time. So Obviously, and if you guys have any questions about anything, you just want a clarification, by all means, go ahead and drop them in, and I'll try to answer them, because often I find it's easier for me to just answer questions directly than try to figure out what needs explaining. Let me grab that. Okay. So, I'm going to actually move myself over to the other side because I want you to be able to see the content browser. Anyway, so here I've set up a new project. I have added in a effects pack and a animation pack, but you don't need to worry about those. So yeah, this is just, aside from that, this is just the normal third-person example project. So to get started, you'll need to go in and make sure you have all those plugins set up. First, obviously, Super RPG Framework. Make sure that's enabled. You'll also need Actions extensions enabled. Editor, where is it? Editor scripting tools, and where is it? Low entry standard library, and then enhanced input, which I don't actually have in controlled, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. One second. I'm going to restart the editor. I guess I missed one. So yeah, so you need to make sure all those are active, or there's a good chance it will crash the editor as you try to use it. Okay. Now, getting started with sRPGF. Well, the first things you're going to need, and this is I think people got this far in the documentation and kind of got stumped. But you need three things. First, a RPG game mode, RPG game instance, and then RPG game settings, which is a unique one. So let's go ahead and set those up. RPG game instance, we got that right there. Okay, and we'll call it my RPG. Actually, we'll call it game instance my RPG. RPG game, and this is, by the way, this is all using the most recent build, or most recent version of sRPGF2 that I released on GitHub. So you should be able to follow along with, whether now or afterward, you should be able to follow along with this pretty well. Which will be the branch 0.1 is the one that I'm using. So yeah. All right. And then game mode, my RPG, and game setting. No, not game, RPG settings. RPG settings. Here we go. And then RPG settings, my RPG. All right. So let's go do the thing you normally do. You set your game mode to be the default game mode, and your game instance to be the default game mode. And the only other thing is, let's open up my game instance, and right here you'll see the settings thing. Let's change that to my RPG. Now, for the most part, game instance, game mode just work like they always have for you. You'll be adding stuff on there to determine the logic of your game. Game settings is the unique thing here. So this just contains a bunch of settings related to your game, and this will probably, again, as this is still in an alpha version, this will probably get modified a lot as I work on stuff. But this, yeah, will contain general stuff like your game's title, your game's logo. There's more, obviously gets some more complicated stuff like your save game class, or your individual save game class, and then your global save game class. This individual save game is obviously like what's a normal save game. It's normal players, a save. And then the global save is just saved for the entire game. So this would contain stuff like, have you unlocked New Game Plus, what music tracks have you unlocked, stuff like that. If you wanted to have optional difficulties you can unlock, things like that. You could also give them like prefixes when they're saved. It'll add these on just so you can differentiate them from from your other save games and stuff. There's stuff for setting up when you set up a new game. There's settings for money, items, equipment. So there's a lot of settings to go through here, and some of this is a bit outdated. Like party members, this stuff is not used. This will need to be removed because it's handled in a module or a gameplay module. But yeah, you have stuff like your XP name, blah blah blah. You have a lot of stuff to look through here. So yeah, this, if you're wanting to like know how to change something overall, with your game, this would probably be the first place you'd want to look. All right, now just give me 1 second to get another drink. Okay, now we got that stuff all loaded up. So let's go ahead and run around a little bit. Question at that point is like, all right, now what? Well, that now what is kind of the issue, because that depends again on what type of game you're wanting to make. Are you wanting to make an action RPG? You wanting to make a turn-based RPG? You're wanting to do like a point-and-click adventure, some top-down hack and slash. Now, so a lot of that stuff would just be, it would be handled like you would any, like you would handle that in any other way outside of Unreal Engine. And I'll try to include some of that stuff again, like I said, with the example projects, which I'll go over the one I'm working on right now in a little bit. But from there, it's really just knowing, a lot of it's knowing what type of game you're wanting to make. So for an example, just I guess I want to give you an example kind of how some of the systems work. So I will start off, I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy. Let's move this thing over. We'll start. Let's go ahead and I will add a new folder for actors. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new character just to show you how combatants work, since that's such an integral part. I'll go ahead and create a new player character for us, give them the combatant component, and kind of show you how it works. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a new character, and I'm going to derive this specifically from, where is it, RPG character. Now this is a character that comes with RPG. It's not necessary 100% that you use this, but this will basically handle a lot of stuff for you fairly quickly. He already has a built-in camera. He already uses the mannequin skeleton, which I'm actually going to change, but or change to the one I have imported. But and he has movement input and stuff. So we're just going to call this default player. Try to handle this quickly. There he is. I'm going to go ahead and handle this. Hey, we'll make it the female one. Why the heck not? So there we go. There's our character. Now let's go ahead and add in the combatant component. And there we go. From here we can set up things like we can give him a name. We'll call him Mary. She could be Mary. We can give him a portrait, which we don't really have any. So yeah, portraits would be a user interface material. We can give her skills. We can give her states. That actually needs to be hidden because that is not something you should be able to access through here, but whatever. You can change their level. You can change their stat rates, which we are going to do. I'm going to show you that in a bit. Yeah, and you have various things you can give them tags, which I'm using a lot more gameplay tags for this version. So be mindful of that. But anyway, that's the first thing, is we're going to give them this combatant component. And obviously, it's do the normal thing. We'll go into my game mode. And for default pawn, we'll go default player. And I think we should be good. Yeah. I can't move her, though. 1 second. Yeah, I think, I'm trying to remember if there's something I missed, because I have enhanced input. Ah, right, I think. Nope, I have that. All right, well, let's see. We'll quickly try to figure out what's wrong with this. Why ain't she moving? I have input all set up. Oh, do I have to set up? I think I have to set up what can. Yeah, so for the RPG character, you'll need to go in. If you create a new character from scratch, you will need to go in, I believe, and set what? No, I don't think you should. Yeah, this stuff should already be taken care of. Forward and right. Let's go to settings. Oh, hang on. I'm so used to not using the content browser here. What the frick is going on? Just make sure. Yeah. You know what? Instead, let's just drag a normal RPG character in. See if I can possess them. If this takes too long, I will switch over. And yeah, what the crap? I have an enhanced input going on, don't I? Yeah. Yeah. What the frig? Wait, hang on. That's weird. Well, I can still set up movement anyway. Let me go ahead and get our character. Now that'll take a little bit. All right, you know what? I was planning on doing this a little bit later, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it now. I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the example project that I have up, that I have on GitHub as well, and I'll just do what I was gonna do in there in there what I was gonna do with a fresh project anyway, because it really makes no difference. So let's go ahead and load up srpgf jrpg. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, I know. They were just working, which is one of those things. Everything's working fine, then you stream and it's like, what? Why is it not working? All right, so example project, JRPG. When you load it up, this is what you'll see. This is the title screen, and I'll give you a quick overview of what we got. So, oh, that's right. I forgot. 1 second, I gotta quickly take care of this. Boom, and I think you won't need to I'll fix this before you guys jump in, so you don't need to worry about what I'm doing right here. I'm just fixing this up. Anyway, okay, play game, and boom, title screen. We can new game. We can run around. We got a little HUD interface down at the bottom. Hopefully, I'm not lagging too bad. Good area transitioning. I don't have any fade in and fade out set up for that just yet. But actually, and this whole template wow, I just realized how much this is lagging. Yeah, again, this is the stream doing this, or maybe just OBS. It is running completely smoothly on my end, so sorry, you didn't have to trust me on that. But I mean, really, does this really look like it's going to be causing this much lag? Come on. But anyway, so we can open up menu. We have stuff for equipment. Open up items. I need to get the cancel button in that, so go ahead and restart. But I don't think I have still skills or status in yet, but menu for party switching, and then I have stuff for saving, loading, and system is not in yet, but that's okay. So yeah, we'll still work in progress, but I also can come up to here, talk to this guy, have him join your party. Hey, look, I got a new guy down there. And then battle system, a little bit of the new battle system. It's my head's in the way of the stuff, but there's some stuff like how it highlights your character and whatever. Still very much a work in progress. No one does damage after the first attack. The enemies don't do anything. So yeah, but get out of here. I know it's broken. So the example project itself has still got a bit of work, but specifically, can I open up the map? Where is it? Sample map. There we go. I don't know why my head was doing that. All right, so I want to show you how I kind of have set this up already, and specifically, I kind of want to show you how little I've actually had to program in order to set that all up. So, ignore this control rig folder. That's just for me creating animations. So in here you'll have the JRPG folder. This will contain all the data. And here you'll have the folder for blueprints, data, maps, materials, sequence, skeletal mesh textures. These are obviously all pretty clear. They contain, materials and shaders, sequences, skeletal mesh, and textures, maps as well. So blueprints and data, kind of the way the logic behind this is blueprints will have all the core systems and code as far as how as far as like the parent classes of how your game is run. And then data will contain all the specific instances of stuff. For example, it'll contain all the music tracks. It'll contain all the different damage types like fire, earth, general, water, wind, whatever. The different enemy encounters, the different enemies themselves, different items, which I've broken down, consumables, equipment, and stuff. Blah, 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 blah. So this will kind of be here for you to dig through and get an idea of Charclos. Hello, thank you for joining. Anyway, this will kind of help you. This is to help you dig through and get kind of an idea through an example of how all this stuff is handled, as well as give you. Essentially, this is to give you the same thing you had with. Wow, the lag is getting pretty bad on my end. Sorry. Essentially, this project is to give you sort of the same thing you had with Super RPG Maker or Super RPG Framework 1, but kind of show you how much things have improved and how much easier it is. So, yeah. Well, when you pop in here, you're first loaded into. We'll actually show you this. The zone manager. We have the zone manager here. This controls all the different zones in a level. So you'll have, the level that you load up, and a level will contain different zones. In this case, I have the outdoor zone, this area here, and the indoor zone, which is I transition to once I walk past this. Let me make sure that level. Yeah, where is indoor? It's down there. Okay. So with the zones is when when a zone is loaded, it'll load in certain stream levels. You can give it a BGM if you're using the BGM module, and it'll unload the previous zone. So in this case, I'm outdoors. When I walk into here, and indoor, it'll load up this map right here, which is this one. So it'll load up this area. And you will need a zone manager in order to handle things like zone transitions and spawn points. But these are also holdover. Zone transitions, just when you walk into them, they'll transition you to a zone spawn point. And a zone spawn point will set your player character here and load whatever zone is attached to it. So for example, when you walk into this, it'll send you to this spawn point right here. And then if you go to that one, you'll be spawned here, and it'll load the indoor zone, which is why when you walk into it, it loads it up. The fading in and fading out has been removed because that's meant for you to set up yourself. And that's actually could be a good example to show you how gameplay modules work, but I'll get to that in just a second. Actually, no. I'll get to that right now. Why don't I? So, gameplay modules, the other big core feature of this. So, gameplay modules, like I said, they go in your game mode. I would typically put them in whatever the parent-most game mode you're using is, unless you have some specific reason not to, which you might. In this case, that's global. This is my main game mode. And they go right in here. So I have a module for a pause menu, which is just... Oops. The pause menu is just this thing. I have a module for a pause menu, a module for party units, which this is specifically for using units that are arranged into a party. That'll be your player party. I have a module for zone management that controls the logic of like what I talked about here with zones. A module for inventory, player inventory. A module for turn-based combat, which is one I've added in. That's actually one of the many plugins that are included. So it's an optional thing because you have sRPGF here, and then you have all these plugins. Many of which are still very much like don't even have any code to them, so I would not recommend using them. And yeah, that. And then I have a module for saving and loading, which this is just the normal method for, excuse me, for saving and loading a game. And then a module for what I call the scene system. And this is just a system, which I think I'll show that a little bit later too. This is just for creating just scenes, essentially dialogue, but there's a little more to them than just conversations. So in this case, that's the scene system. Yeah, so I showed you here. Demonstrate this again. So you walk in here, and the function will work because the very basic function you need is, well, we want to be able to transition from one zone to another. But there may be specific stuff you want to happen, like maybe you want to fade out. You want this fade out the screen when you begin transition, fade it back in when you're done. Maybe you want to remove the HUD. So what you do is you'll select on whatever module controls that stuff. In this case, we're handling zone management, so we'll select on the zone management module. Down here, you'll have these different events for when different stuff in the module happens. For example, when a module is loaded or unloaded, or when a zone spawn, which is what happens when your character is respawned to another point. And then on transition, begin and end. And this is what we want. So this is like when the transition begins and when the transition ends. What do we want to do? Well, when we start transitioning, we'll want to fade out the screen. So I think we just do fade. We have two options. We can fade screen. This will be faster. We want to fade screen in this case. We want to fade it out. In that case, I'll also want to remove the HUD. Set main HUD. There we go. Set it on and off when we reappear. And I think that's it. Let's go and double check. BGM fade duration. I don't think is it BGM. It's transition delay. So transition delay for zone management. This kind of handles my brain. Basically, how long it takes for when you're loading from one zone to the next. How long it'll take between when it starts loading the new zones and when it finishes loading the new zones. So it gives you a bit of a delay. So in this case, we have 1.5. So let's make our fade the same, so it matches that. And I think that's all we need. Yep, and there, we have perfect transition. And so that's kind of meant to show how you'll have all these sort of systems that'll handle things for you, but you still may want to customize this specific example or the specific aesthetic things about what happens when certain events take place in your game or certain functions are run, because that's going to be specific to your game. And this is meant to handle all the stuff that all the boring stuff, basically the stuff that you don't need to worry about, the stuff that it would be universal through most versions of this, and then you would handle the aesthetic stuff yourself. So that's kind of essentially how gameplay modules work. This is another example. One is the scene system, and this one's a little more complicated. That's what I showed you over here with dialogue. What just happened there was a scene, and I will show you that specific scene as well. If we go into data, scenes, here it is, scene recruit yellow. So this is a scene. A scene is just an action event that you can program specifically what happens into it, and then you can tell it to finish the scene. And so what will happen in here, for example, is if you get this module, you can say, all right, what do we want when a scene begins? What do we want to happen when a scene ends? Blah, 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 blah. In this case, I have it no, that's dialogue line. Here, when a scene begins, no, let's see now. When a scene begins, I turn off the main HUD. And when a scene ends, I make sure that I am now controlling the player again, and then I turn back on the main HUD. And so for this specific scene, I have a dialogue line that says, hello there. Then I get a player choice. These are both stuff I have added in, by the way. Then I get a player choice, and I've set up choice here, join my party, goodbye. So when I select option 0, join my party, he runs the line OK, and then I grab the party module, the player party module, which, yeah, if you want to look up those, you can just look up game module, and you'll have a bunch of the modules right here that you can call and run functions from. And as long as they're in your game mode, they'll run completely fine. Anyway, player party module, we added a unit to our party, unit yellow, and then we ran a scene event, and I'll show you this in a second. And then we finished up the scene. This just works by where it is. Oh yeah, so I have set up an NPC. This is just for this game. Or sorry, let me explain that better. I have a class for this example project called NPC, and the way it works is when you interact with them, which interactable is another thing to go over. It'll play a scene, and then sorry, my brain's farting a little bit, and it'll run a scene event. I'm not explaining this very well, but just when I interact with him, it plays a scene, and then when a scene event is sent out, it runs it. And in this case, when I hit the scene event recruit, we just excuse me, destroy this guy. So that's how you'd handle things like dialogue. Now, I haven't really gone over some of like how any of the combat stuff, right? Because that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It might be the last thing I'll go over because I'm trying to give an overview here a little bit more clearly of how things work, but it's probably better for me to do like specific tutorial videos covering things. So let me think. Well, let's look at things I've talked about. Combatants. So it's hard to explain the. Actually, no, I got it. I'll show you how combatants and abilities work just with the character I have, because that's a core thing. So, no actors. So here's my default player, the player character, right? Very simple stuff right here. I handle a lot of function just by telling this when I hit the menu, open the pause menu, and try interacting. That's the main thing I'm hoping you kind of understand when you start using this, is that you'll be seeing a lot less of this, a lot less blueprint code and stuff, because so much of that is handled in the back end. So, let's say when I click Q, no. Well, let's look at it. Hang on. No, A. All right, so just to show you an example, I got the combatant component here. I have, examples. This is the character that's also used during turn. I use the same character for turn-based combat and for moving around the field here. And in this case, he's got his little icon there. Where is it? Yeah, his specific, in combat, his specific stats and stuff are set from his unit. Which in order to do that, we would just say get unit data. Well, okay, basically how you'd get a party member, for example, would be you'd get party module, and we'll say get unit. We get unit GUID, which is just a unit's serial number, essentially. It's a way of identifying them, and we can get their data from there. Get unit data, or we can just get the unit data right here. Get party unit data, blah blah blah, and this will work like if you know our or if you've used the original version of Super RPG framework, works the same way. You just get their index in the party, blah blah blah. For a combatant, if you wanted to set their data from an existing unit, so if you spawned in a combatant and you said, all right, this is going to be for the first party member, for example, in turn-based combat. So I want to set up this guy based on the first party member's data. You would just do load combatant from unit, and you would just load in the unit's GUID serial number, and then as well as what category of unit. And the category, can be whatever you want, but typically it's like, all right, is this an enemy unit? Is it a party unit? So in this case, it would be combatant category party. Boom, there. And when we're not going to do that, what I want to demonstrate is how you would handle like just any form of combat. And again, it's if you use the gameplay ability system, it's like that. What you would do is you get your combat component, and in order to handle pretty much anything, you would perform it using combat actions. You could go through the normal way of like setting up all your stuff here, like jump. You hit. Oh, I hit space, and then I jump, right? Depending on your game, like for a turn-based RPG, this would probably be fine. But if you're doing an action RPG, you might have specific variables that be modified as you jump. Like you might attack differently in the air. You might have a double jump. You might have all sorts of things. And a combat action would allow you to take all that information and put it in a single blueprint. And it really crunches down code. I would recommend if you don't know how they work, look up Unreal Engine 4's gameplay ability system. This doesn't use it, but it operates very, very, very similar. So if you understand how that works, you'll have a good understanding of how the combatant and combatant actions work. But anyway, let's just create a demonstration. All right, so when I hit the button Q, I want to perform an action. So we'll say execute action. Now you have a couple options here. You can execute a skill or an item, and this will just run execute action, but it'll pull the action class from the skill an item. My brain, bang. But, or no, wrong one. So we're just going to go ahead and execute an action. In order to do this, we need to create an actual action to execute. So we go ahead and open up Blueprint classes, and let's look up combatant action right there. And we're going to call this my combat action. And in this case, we're going to, I say we're gonna, so right now he's at no health right now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it so when this happens, it's gonna play the jump montage, or the jump animation, and when it's finished, it's going to do me 10% damage. So how I would do that is event on activate. When this action is activated, we'll say play montage, which I don't think I have a montage for. Oh, I have a combat attack montage. Yeah, we'll go with that actually for first. And when it's completed, we'll go ahead and say complete. We want to make sure we complete the action, otherwise it'll just continue to exist in the world and it could screw with things. So make sure you always either complete, or else if you want to make sort of a failed action, you can cancel it. It's effectively the same thing, but it's just a way of identifying, hey, this one was a success and this one was not. So an interruption will be cancel. Anyway, let's go ahead and get our combat. We can combatant character, and this will get the character. Yeah, it's also recommended, as much as you can, try to put combatant components in character classes. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get our mesh. Again, this is a thing that's just normal to Unreal 4, so I won't really explain how to go about doing using a montage and stuff. But so now this way, whenever we press Q, it should play the montage. No, we have to add it in right. So we have my combat action. When it's activated, we'll play the montage animation, and then when it's finished, we'll complete this action. Where the heck? So we got our default player here. Let's say when we hit Q, we'll right there, my combat action. I have a few others set up already, you see, but yeah, we'll run my combat action, and let's go. So I hit Q. There, he does the animation. Yep, and it's completing every time. Now, all I want to do is hurt myself. So when the let me see. So when it's completed, when the montage is completed, before completing the action, we want to go ahead and damage ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to get instigator. The instigator is just the combatant that instigated this action, which is this guy. And we're going to go ahead and do some damage to him. I'm going to say damage. Now we have complex damage, which allows you to set up a lot of specific things, like what stats affected, the amount of damage, whether it's a healer damage, damage type, the instigator, blah blah blah. And this can be modified by a lot of things, but you can also, if you are just wanting to quickly apply a set amount of damage to someone, you can do that too. I'm gonna say apply damage int, and this will apply, I'll do 0.1 to my HP, and this will apply 10% damage to my HP. And I'm going to go to the title screen and reload this because I don't think it'll do anything otherwise. Where is it? And you probably won't see anything because it's modifying the combatant. Yeah, so it's not, you're not seeing anything here, but my combatant is being damaged. I'm going to set another thing. Let's say T. Oh yeah, the reason why it's not showing up is because these are showing up. These are units that are being showed up. I'm damaging the combatant, but not the unit. So let's go ahead and damage his unit instead. Not sure. Well, it's just the top unit. All right. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you kind of how combat actions work. So we'll say damage unit. Same thing. We'll do 10% damage to his HP, and we'll just need to get his GUID. So we'll get party units module, get unit GUID, and we'll just get the first party member, which will be the guy we're controlling. When this is completed, we'll damage him 10%. And let's see. And now if we look in, hang on. Yep. And as we see, as the ability is finishing, we're slowly losing health because our unit is being damaged 10% each time we do it. And that is essentially how effects work. And to give you a more specific example, we'll run a battle. So if I run up to this guy, we'll start a battle. We have the enemy health there, and if I do attack, excuse me. So we're right there. He just lost some health. We're running a similar effect there. We just do attack, boom, execute, and that is contained. Let's see, JRPG, blueprint, combat actions. This one right here, combat attack. So the way this is working is it's, for example, for the combat attack, all the logic you'd set up is right in here. So this says, hey, first let's save where we are at because we want to put the character. Actually, this might be useful if I could show you this alongside the actual combat event. So when we attack, let's pay attention to what happens. So we're in this spot. We attack the guy, move over to him, do the animation, apply damage to him, and then we're sent back right here to this spot. Same thing with green, and we're sent back to this spot. Same thing with red, sent back to the spot. Stop it. Yeah, I know there are errors. I need to work on that a little bit. So that's all of that is contained right here. So we have combat, get combat character, we're saving his position, then we're playing his attack montage, and then we're also running a sequencer, but don't worry about that. Then we're running this complete function, which is the way a complete function works is it just applies all the battle effects to a target, which hang on. In this case, I believe the only battle effect is not contained there. Where is it? Let me see. Blueprint. No, it'd be in data. In data, skills, attack. So I have this here, a combat skill. It's called it's the normal attack command. The way it works is it'll run this combat action attack, which we were just looking at. This is combat action attack. So when used, it'll run this event. And then it contains the effect normal attack. And then once it runs this impact, it'll apply that effect to all of its targets, which in the case of this is just whoever I selected as the guy I wanted to attack. It's all we need. So you'd set up whatever effects you want right here. You can change up their power. Let's go look at this effect normal attack. And the way this works is you can set up, this is a bit complicated, but basically, actually we'll go to the combat skill damage. That'll show it off better. Basically, this is how an effect works, is that you have a function for when the effect is called, and then you can do stuff. And here, in this case, it gets the instigator's power, and then the target's power, subtracts the target's power from the instigator's power, and then applies the damage. So in other words, in this case, it says, all right, we're going to take the instigator's physical attack, which say that's 10. We're going to multiply it by 4. Then we're going to take the target's defense, multiply it by 3, subtract the attack from the defense, and then what's left over is going to be our damage. But basically the thing you need to know is I have this here. It's a combat skill. And then I tell the combatant, I want to show you specifically where I did that as well. Well, it doesn't really matter. I'll just pull out here and show you the same thing. Execute skill. So an example of how you would handle combat in something like this. You would get the combat components, say execute a skill. I want to execute the skill command attack. All right, well, what happens when I execute command attack? It runs this action class here, combat action attack. And then, yeah, it runs through all this, plays the animation montage, and on impact, and impact is it's just an animation notify that's included that you can set up. But on impact, it'll run this function, which will apply all the battle effects for this action to whatever the targets are. Well, what battle effects does it have? Well, you put those in right here, normal attack. So it says run this thing and then do the normal attack effect, which, like I showed you, removes 10% damage. And that's a simplified version, but that's essentially how you would handle stuff like combat in the game. Now, this is turn-based, but you could do the same thing for an action RPG, kind of like what I was showing you right here. Oops, that was a mistake. I forgot to put back in our custom action. Get out of here, you. So yeah, I'm clicking that thing to swing here, and it's doing damage to me now. But you could easily say create like a sphere in front of him, and instead it does damage to whatever's overlapping that sphere. And that's the very basic version of how you would handle that. I know it was a bit, hopefully it wasn't too confusing. It's one of those things where since I've been working on it, I understand the ins and outs of it, but it is a lot to kind of retrain your mind to understand. But once you do, I think you'll find it's very, very, very powerful and very useful for what you're wanting to do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really want to go over, because it's just hard to explain some of this stuff. I guess the last thing I can go over is just show you menus and kind of how those work. So you have the normal menu here, you have like the equip menu here, which is being blocked a little bit, and party and blah blah blah. I'll show you how little is actually in those menus, because that's another thing is menus can get pretty ridiculous. User widgets can get pretty ridiculous. So normally just because you have so much code. So I kind of want to show you how simple those are. So I have those here in the menu folder. Let's open up menu, pause menu. That's the simplest one. And so all this really has in it is we have an option selector, we have a unit selector, and then I have an element for the game's time code and money. And that's it, really. That's all that's in this menu. Excuse me. And all that happens is when we open it up, we'll get our unit selector and just then our whatever our party units are, whatever units are in our party, and we'll say, hey, create a list of units based on this. And that's all we're really doing. The option, so also the selector option works a little differently from the others, as it's literally just a way you list clickable options. Like here I have equip, item, status, skills, party, and I fill those out here, equip, item, skill, status, party, and then an on option show, you'll have this event on option chosen, and you decide what happens when I click that option. So, but anyway, that's like the pause menu. All I have is these two elements here, and it handles everything else is handled simply. If you open up the equipment menu, so what do I have here? I have I have one thing here, which is equipment slots. That's one selector. I have a unit status, a unit entity status, a unit entity thing that I created here. I have a unit selector as well. So really only have to worry about 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, and I have the item list. So 4 things, and this is the entire code for that. For handling all of this, his handles every, and really not even this stuff up here. Specifically, this handles all of equipment. It's probably not the best version because this is actually one of the more complicated menus. So maybe instead another one could be, let's go items. Items. So I got literally right here. I only have these 2 widget things: the selector item and category, or selector category and selector item. And all this does is when I load it up, I just get the player's inventory, put it into the item list, and then when I click on the category I want, I will then take the player's inventory and then filter out any items that are not in that category, and then I will just create an item list from that. And so it's hopefully that's giving you an idea of like how much time you can it'll save you, so you're not having to, and every time you want a list of items, go through and manually add them in through blueprints and stuff. Because that's all what this is about, is saving as much time as I can. Because that's the biggest motivation for me making this, or the biggest thing that helps me like make this of the quality I can, is that I've try to make it a thing to where I use all the stuff I make in my own games, or specifically it's stuff I make in my own games I put out for you guys, because then the better it works, the better it is for me, the more easier it is for me to use, the easier it will be for you guys to use as well. So it gives me more motivation to work on it. So if there is, I'm gonna try to make things as easy to understand as I can. But yeah, if there's stuff you guys are confused about, feel free to keep on letting me know in the Discord or in comments or whatever. And that's kind of all I've got for SRPGF today. How long have I been going? About an hour, not too bad. Let's go ahead and minimize that. So that's kind of that's more or less all I have for you guys today. Going over what Super RPG Framework does. It'll probably make more sense as I get into specific game types, but yeah, again, hope that clarified things up somewhat. I would recommend, if you want to get your hands on it, right ahead. I'm gonna be working mainly on the example project, trying to get it finished up, and so it's something like, all right, here's more or less a very small but a complete game that you can look to as an example of how to use SRPGF2, and also you can use it as a template project like you would have with Super RPG Framework 1. So you can just kind of work off it to take what's already there and work off it. But that's all I got. I will see about getting. Oh man, it's hard to promise about getting any videos or tutorials or any of that stuff up. But I will see what I can do about that. That's all I have. Tomorrow, I'm going to be streaming development of the 3D platformer I am working on called Mariposa and the Galaxy Man. I'm working on it with the wonderful Ink Rose. I would recommend you subscribe to her YouTube channel for information on the game. But yeah, I'll be streaming that tomorrow at 12 o'clock Central Time. And I would love to see you there. That'll be me actually working on a game and not just talking about tools that I make games with. So I thank you all for joining me. Once again, hope this was helpful. And I will I'll be seeing you all later. So thanks, guys. So long.